Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guests may not represent those of the host of the station. Folks, I love what I do, and I'm so glad that I get to meet all my wonderful guests. And what's special about my guest today is that Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO of Passionate World Talk Radio Network, sent me Alfredo Botello's press release. And I am thrilled to have Alfredo Botello on. Let me tell you a little about Alfredo. He is a writer and an author of the book 180 Days. He is coming out with the book on January 14th, which is really right around the corner. Author and writer of Spin Cycle, Notes from a Reluctant Caregiver, a novel. A quote on the book is, an intimate yet epic journey digging into the messy truths and secrets connecting parents and their children. Barry Hertz wrote that from the Globe and Mall. And it's a cute cover. It has, it looks like an elderly person flying up in the air, which I thought was really cute. And I can't wait to get into that. And Alfredo wrote a chapter in a book. It's an Amazon bestseller. The name of the book is Wellness Through Woods, a multifocal anthology on healthcare, patient safety, and wellness. And the chapter that Alfredo wrote is called Parenting a Parent, Entering Their Reality. How I love that title. I love it. Alfredo is an award-winning novelist and screenwriter by trade. He had received a Fulbright Fellow in Architecture, a Nickel Fellow for screenwriting, and he is a caregiver for his mom, Lisa. And he also owns 2 bars in Oakland, California. Busy guy. I want to welcome you, Alfredo Botello, to Chatting with Betsy.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, and I'll try to hit at least one of the 3 points that you pointed out in your mission, but entertainment, enlightenment, and something else. So if we get one
enlighten and entertain. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm sure you will. I hope I'm saying your last name right. Is it Botello?
You've got it, yeah.
Oh, okay. When I saw, I'm going to start with your chapter in this book, Wellness Through Woods. When I saw that chapter, Parenting a Parent, Entering Their Reality, I was thinking, well, that chapter could be for anyone, because we have to enter our loved ones who have dementia, their reality, whether it's your husband, your wife, a partner, your grandparent, whoever it is. And that is just so important. How did you come up with that title for that chapter, Alfredo? I'm going to start with that.
I came up with it through my own experience. So the chapter could be taken as just as a piece, really, of the novel, the Spin Cycle Notes from a Reluctant Caregiver. But it was really the evolution of my relationship with my mom. So about 4 or 5 years ago is when I first started noticing something was different. And by that I mean she would look, for example, so she's a very kind of perfectionist German woman who, the house is spotless and everything is in the right place, and she had a calendar on the fridge. And this calendar on the fridge really was just the most important document in the house. So every day she'd have her appointments, whether it's to the hairstylist or a doctor or getting the car fixed, whatever it was. And there came a time where she would look at her own writing on the calendar and ask me, what does it all mean? And she would say stuff like, I just can't get it together. And I didn't understand. And at first I was very frustrated and irritated because my mom, a single mom, was always so competent and so independent. I mean, this is a woman who, in the 1970s, after her divorce from my dad, took belly dancing lessons and would dance in the house. But yes, she would go on Sierra Club hikes, I think, sort of partly to meet people and partly just to get out there. She's a first-generation immigrant, and she went to Toastmasters to learn how to be a better speaker. I mean, this is a woman who just ate life and who did a spectacular job raising me, worked her butt off to get me into private school, just an affectionate, warm, really a great person. And then I was seeing all these changes, which I didn't understand. Felt like her personality was changing, and I was just so frustrated. So at some point in the journey of things, when we finally got the diagnosis, which was, I think it's so fuzzy too, these diagnoses. I think it was likely onset Alzheimer's. And, for people who have had this experience of getting the diagnosis, you go in there to the geriatric doctor. Half of it is based sort of on tests. They do the cognitive tests that people probably have heard about, but then they also make sure that one person, ideally the person closest to the patient, is there, because they really quiz you in depth about what have you seen about mom, what's going on, how the last few years have been. So you feel like you're part of the diagnosis, and you're not really sure if you're saying the right things or how you're presenting them. Anyways, it was a very kind of confusing and hectic time as it's always happening. But there was a point where I sort of finally realized, and this is, taking 3, 4, 5 years. It's a process, definitely. It's not an overnight epiphany. But I realized, sure. It's a gradual thing. And I realized that, first of all, some sort of fights and squabbles were just not worth having. Like if she thinks her brother, who passed away 16 years ago, is coming to visit, I could say it's not going to happen, or he's dead. But to what end, really? Like, what's the point of that little fuss when I could just say, oh, okay, well, let's see, and kind of move on to something else? Again, all this took time. So the chapter about entering the reality, parenting your parent, that's how I felt. I feel like the world kind of prepares us and prompts us to be ready to have our own kids. From the time you're a little kid, you're playing with dolls. At some point you learn in school that, okay, pregnancy is something that takes 9 months, and then you have a baby, and your life centers around it, and you're kind of primed for all this. But what I feel is just almost kind of criminally lacking, at least I didn't pick up on it if it's out there. Nobody told me that I would have another, I have two sons in their 20s, but nobody told me that I would have another kid, namely my mom, who at about 79 or 8, that was not a chubby, rosy-cheeked person, but a fully formed adult who would be changing. And that came as a big kind of a blind side to me, and I had to just sort of, like everybody else, I think, scramble and figure it out. So I was thinking about this with my mom and entering a reality and going with the flow, taking what she gives me and sort of trying to play off it, whether it's, her daily decaf latte at Starbucks, or she loves little kids. So, if she sees a baby or a toddler in the store, she'll walk up to them. And it's great to find that their parents usually are very nice and open to, an older woman kind of going and fussing over their kids. These things that are inherent in my mom really start to come out. And the more I went with it, the easier things were for both of us. And one kind of realization I did have was I thought to myself, wait a minute, this is not so different than when my older son, Raphael, was playing football in high school. Now, I wasn't an athlete. I was probably more the kid in high school who kind of was a snob and kind of looked down on jocks, and they looked down on me. So we had the perfect relationship. But he loved football, and I thought, well, I still want to connect with my son, even though he's getting older and more independent. So suddenly I found myself going to all of his games and working the snack booth or being on the chain gang, moving the chains, so that I could learn to talk football with him. So I was entering his reality, which was football, heavy metal music, and sushi. Now, I already like heavy metal, and I already like sushi, so that was easy. But the football was a new thing, and I realized that when I got into his reality and learned something about it, we connected. So it was really no different with my mom. I just needed to understand what made her now tick and the things that she was interested, from word search puzzles, like I say, to little arts and crafts, coloring pictures and books. So anyways, that's a very, very long-winded answer to your question of how did I name it that chapter. But that's really,
I love it. I love it, Alfredo, because we don't know when our loved ones get diagnosed. It's such a shock to us. And my husband was diagnosed in 2010. There wasn't much information then. when my mother-in-law was diagnosed in 1999, 2000, 24 years ago, there wasn't anything, Alfredo. I didn't know. When my mother-in-law had her sundowning hallucinations, I didn't know that was part of the package. Nobody told me. Nobody warned me. And that's one of the it's hard. Go ahead.
Yeah. So did you struggle with some of the feelings that I struggled with, which
yes.
was I was frustrated. I was short with her. I didn't understand. And I felt terrible for having those feelings, but I couldn't help it. Did you find yourself in a similar situation?
Oh, definitely, Alfredo. Of course, the problem between my husband and I, because he didn't believe that his mother could be mean. I mean, his mother would walk me out of the house because we lived with her, throw things at me. She accused me of stealing. She told everyone, and I didn't know this till later, she told everyone I was stealing the house from her. I was stealing her annuities, her house. And I didn't know that was part of the diagnosis either. And this is why, Alfredo, I do my show, and this is why I'm so passionate about resources, because I want people to know about resources that I didn't have. And I know firsthand the difference between when you are educated as a caregiver, and that is so important, to when you're not educated as a caregiver, because, back then, 24 years ago, there wasn't much. But now, in 2024, almost 2025, there is a lot of information out there, and I say this all the time, and I'm a Jersey girl, so I say it like it is, and I don't care if anyone gets mad. There's no excuse now, folks, not to educate yourself if you're a caregiver. None whatsoever. There are plenty of resources for you to know this without learning the hard way, like Alfredo and I. And that's how we learned. I learned a lot from other caregivers once I joined support groups on Facebook. Now, I didn't know about the hallucinations and sundowning and how to deal with that. I would yell at my mother-in-law. I would say, no,
right.
I'm not stealing from you. I didn't know any better. But when Matt, my husband, started to hallucinate, and he hallucinated near the end of his life, I just went with it. I told Josh, our son, going to come a day, Matt, your dad is going to hallucinate. You just go with it. And sure enough, it happened. I was at the supermarket, and Josh called me up, and he said, Daddy thinks there's people in the house hitting him. And I said, okay, give me the phone and just be calm. And I said, oh, Matt, I'm really sorry that's going on. I'm going to be home, and I'm going to take care of it. You're okay. Josh is going to throw the people out. And he'd say, oh, you sure? And I said, yes. And, he would see his dead relatives, his mom, his dad, his brother, and he would tell me they visited him. And I'd say, that's so nice, Matt. How was your visit? How are they? Tell them I said hi the next time you see them. Because why tell Matt that they were dead and aggravate him?
You're
right?
you're hitting the nail on the head there, Betsy. I mean, I feel like if you haven't already, you should be writing a how-to caregiver book, because I mean, what you're saying is, I feel like, really resonates and definitely mirrors my experience, which is how you kind of, I guess the word would be, maybe you kind of de-escalated the situation, right? It could have been tense. It could have been, Matt was obviously unhappy and agitated, and maybe your son Josh would have responded differently if he didn't have your advice, but you had kind of gone through this, is what it sounds like. And
right.
In the moment, counted, rather than ramp him up, and say, well, these people they're gone, or no one's hitting you. Like, there's no, reason and logic. Just, if they work a little bit, fine, but chances are with dementia, they're not going to work. And you have to find different strategies. It doesn't matter who's right or wrong. What matters is, like you've already just described, I mean, beautifully there, which is you entered his reality and calmed the situation, and it sounded like you did it. And it also sounded like you had a lot of really painful lessons, with your mother-in-law on the way toward handling things possibly, it sounds like, a bit better, and just because what you knew and experienced already with your husband.
Yes, and I wish there was the education back 24 years ago. I'm so grateful, Alfredo, that you're coming on, because it's very seldom that men will speak out about their caregiving experiences. I've interviewed a few men that were caregivers, and it's really hard for men to, first of all, say how they feel because of how society, looks at men. And when it seems to be a lot, and maybe you could tell me if you feel this way, some men feel like I should be able to fix the problem, and I can't. And then I'm failing my loved one, whether it be, their mom, their wife, or whoever it is. When there's some things that can't be fixed, and there's no relation to someone's manhood, someone being that, strong type, there's just some things in life that we cannot, that aren't fixable. And it's not a reflection on us, whether you're a man or a woman. It's just the way that, that's how life is. And it's really hard for caregivers. I did a show with the station manager, Jeannie White, and 6 years ago, people didn't even want to come on and talk about their caregiving experiences. But now I'm glad that now caregivers are sharing their stories. People with dementia are sharing their stories, and that is thrilling for me to see, because we learn from each other. We learn from each other's stories.
Yeah, I think that is very true and powerful. I have gotten the feedback from a few folks who were happy and surprised to see a man writing about the caregiving experience. Now, typically, or I'd say more typically, you'll have maybe a memoir of being a caregiver, and it is most often written by a woman who's had the experience. But I didn't really think I didn't think of it in terms of gender, because I'm a guy. That's how I was born. But I just wanted to relay my experience, because the point of writing this book. So this is a novel, but of course it's based a lot of the pieces and the realism of it, I hope, comes from my own experience and talking to other caregivers. But the whole, the title, Spin Cycle, Notes from a Reluctant Caregiver, kind of says a lot about it. I do feel like I've been in a kind of spin cycle of emotions, from anger to frustration, resentment, to good days where I feel like I'm patient and open, and I feel like I'm proud, like I've done right by Mom, and other days where I feel like, boy, if I saw the hidden camera footage of the scowling face I made or the way I spoke with her, I'd be ashamed. And I think we have to talk about that, because in general, this is not just to caregiving, but I just sort of feel in life that if you have thought something or felt it, you're not alone, because we're all a common animal. And so the point of this book is that I want it to resonate, so that when you read it, you're like, oh, that I can totally relate to that. That's something that just happened to me. And even more important, I wanted to bring comfort to people. I want people to read it and go, oh, right, that's exactly how I felt. I was ashamed to say it. I'm so glad somebody else feels that way, because when I read anything, book, magazine, article, doesn't matter, poem, whatever, if I feel connected to something, I feel comforted. I just feel like I'm not alone. That's the big thing. I just don't want people to feel so alone. And this is, this is kind of the book I wish I had 4 or 5 years ago, to let me know that this is going to be the crazy spin cycle you're going to be in, and it's totally normal, and it's okay, and maybe you can avoid some of the heartache and the frustration if you know a little bit about what's happening. So if it just connects with people emotionally, like you said a second ago about the power of sharing our stories, then I've done my job.
Yes, and your book, from what I have read about it, Alfredo, it's different, because you, from what I read, if I remember what I read, is that there are in a group of caregivers that want to be better caregivers, and they're sharing their stories, but the leader of the caregivers wants to become a better caregiver. And that's what we all want when we're caregiving, and we think we're alone in how we feel, but we're not. I say this all the time on the show, and that's why I created my support group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement, because I didn't want people to be alone like I was. I did not have support for a good 14 years between my mother-in-law having it, my dad had Alzheimer's, then my husband. It's a lot. Excuse me.
Yeah, you've been I've been through the ringer there, and the basic conceit of the book is that the protagonist, his name is Ezra, he's a high school math teacher, and his life is just coming unglued. He's going through divorce. He barely talks to his teenage son, and a lot of it is exacerbated by caring for his mom, who has dementia. And he's at his wit's end, and so what he does is he starts a little storefront school in a mini mall, a little 1,000 square foot place called APPA, which is APPA, or Adults Patiently Parenting Adults. And he brings together these 9 folks, kind of misfit, lost souls like himself, dealing with an aging parent or relative, and they are all trying to they're all trying to get better, of course, become more compassionate, because I think compassion at the end of the day is the kind of umbrella over all of this, and that's what he's doing. And I think you just mentioned something in your last speaking, which I think is super important, which is when you didn't have the support there, Betsy, in the beginning, it sounds like you had mentioned maybe a little bit of difficulty with your husband when the mother-in-law had it. I feel like one thing that people don't talk that much about is that it doesn't just impact you and the person you're caring for. It radiates outward. It can affect your relationships outside of the caregiving experience. So you might be tired or withdrawn at work. You can be tired and withdrawn at home with your loved ones. You might lash out at them. You might withdraw, because I think when you have no support, you just feel so isolated, and you just kind of feel alone and stuck with your own anger and shame or whatever else you're feeling, because you've got no outlet for it. And then it does actually have this effect, I think, on the people closest to you, and that's kind of the collateral damage, I think, sometimes of being a stressed out caregiver.
Oh, absolutely, Alfredo. If you were in front of me, I'd hug the stuffings out of you. You are right on. You're right on target, because the emotions, and I love your title, Spin Cycle, because it is a spin cycle. People equate it to a roller coaster ride, the ups and downs. But it is a spin cycle. It is a basket of mixed emotions that get mixed up. And people think, oh, I'm the only one, feeling this way. You're not. It's just that people won't talk about it. And actually, that's how I got discovered by Jeannie White. I used to go in my car and do videos about caregiving. And
really?
Because I'm a Jersey girl, because I'm a Jersey girl and my father's daughter, I just tell it like it is. And I didn't sugarcoat. I will not ever sugarcoat Alzheimer's, folks, or any type of dementia. And it's not, pretty and tied up in a pink bow with ribbons and unicorns. We are dealing with such a change, and people think, Alfredo, it's just memory loss. No, the person's brain is dying, and they can't control. And that's hard to digest, because when your loved one curses you out and calls you names, you're like, okay, my feelings are hurt. Why did you do that? And you just have to get a thick skin and learn. It's hard.
It's true. Even if you might know in the back of your head, hey, look, this disease is causing issues, literal physical issues with the brain. Like it's no fault of their own. They're not to blame.
Right.
Still, this is someone you've been part of your life for all these years, and you still can't help it. You're normal. You're a human being. You feel something when they lash out, when they're nasty with you, or all those things. I think you'd have to be sort of a floating saint or something to not be affected by all that, and just to kind of be cool and mellow all the time. Like you say, it's just not like that. And I think that you don't sugarcoat and that you're honest. People always respond to that. When you're just trying to brush over a good face on something and not get into the weeds, into the difficult stuff, I think people sense that and they sort of tune out. because that's not the real experience, and you want to know what that is. You want to relate to it. So, yeah, certainly in the book, I go into some pretty dark places, but I think it's right because I don't want people to just live on the surface of the situation.
That is so true. I tell people all the time, Alfredo, there is no such person as a perfect caregiver because we're not perfect. But if there is someone out there who thinks they are a perfect caregiver, give me a call. Email me. Yeah. I want to do an interview with you. I want to meet you. I have made mistakes. I have made many mistakes. I had meltdowns with Matt. I yelled at Matt. I yelled at Matt when I didn't realize why he could not see what was right in front of him until I learned about their vision difficulties. And then, of course, I didn't yell at him about that. Then I felt bad. But when I had a epiphany one day, Alfredo, after I got short with Matt, and, of course, we get short fuses because we don't sleep correctly. I said to myself, Betsy, no one asked for this. Nobody wakes up and says, oh, I think I'll have Alzheimer's or whatever dementia, and I need someone to help me all the time. I know that I would eventually get back my freedom. I won't have Matt anymore, but I would get back my freedom. But they will never get their freedom back. And how would I feel? And that's what we need to do, I think, Alfredo. We need to put ourselves in our loved one's situation. And I can laugh about it now, but Matt would say how he loved Josh and I, and we're great, we do stuff, and the next minute he's cursing us out. You don't do anything, you blank. And I could just see my son's face just, the change. And it's really hard for children, even adult children, as you were saying, Alfredo. And my son has a cognitive disability. So I had to explain to Josh that, Dad doesn't mean what he's saying. That's Mr. Alzheimer's monster coming out. When you hear that, Josh, that's Mr. Alzheimer's coming out, not your daddy, because your dad would never talk to you that way. You have to remember that. I know it hurts, and I know it sucks, but he can't help it. And
that's right.
yeah, but it's hard. And I think, too, Alfredo, is, and you said you're a parent, when your children, when they're caregivers, let them vent to you. Let them say they don't like it. It's okay. Don't judge your child. Let your child know they could come to you and vent, because if you cut that communication off, you're going to be really sorry, because they're going to go to other people you may not want them to go to get advice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think this is also totally true, which is, yeah, the more judgmental, condescending, whatever you are with your kids, with anybody, of course they're just going to tune you out and be like, okay, great, that's not working. So I think it's much better, like you said, to just be open and have them feel comfortable enough that they can come to you. And you're kind of jumping back to the experience with with your husband and so on, and with my mom. It's I find that it's sometimes it's not just about even the verbal stuff. It's because sometimes words aren't really the right thing to get through. But I know that on let's just say my best days, if I just, let's say I'm in if I'm in a snitty mood, or I feel rushed or busy because I have to, I've got to take care of Mom right now, but I'm on this deadline and so on, and I just kind of feel resentful and I don't want to do it. Yeah, sometimes it'll come out that way, and that sucks, and I don't feel great about that, but I am human, and I'm kind of learning to sort of forgive myself for those moments, because on other moments I try then, I tell myself, hold her hand, smile at her, make sure to, if she's feeling like she wants her favorite chocolate or yogurt, let's go to the store and get it. We can make an outing out of it. Well, actually, we'll make that not just an obligation or a burden, but that can be the event, the fun event, really, of the day, if I'm thinking about it from her point of view. Because if in some way she is a little bit like a child again, in some sense, Like, I remember how it was when my grandma said, we're going to walk to Thrifty's and buy ice cream. And that was back when you can get a double scoop of, I don't know if you have it back in New Jersey, but it's a drugstore like CVS or Walgreens. They're not around so much anymore, but when I was a kid, you could go and I think it was 15 cents for a single, 25 cents for a double, maybe 50 cents. I don't remember, but it was great. And
yeah.
So I think, look, if my mom is in the mood for a chocolate, yeah, let's do that. That'll be the thing. So to kind of let's borrow a sports metaphor here. It's taking what the defense gives you, right? Like you might have your plan A. Like today, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to do these things. It's going to go okay with your person with dementia, or maybe we have an appointment to get to. Whatever's going on, but then you have to, and this is hard for me because I'm a Virgo, so I'm very planned and I can be very rigid and all of that for sure just the way I am. So I've had to learn to take what the defense gives me. So if my mom is not feeling it that day, or she wants to do something else, or she has an outburst of some kind, I try to go with it. I'm not always perfect, and I would say the asterisk to everything I'm saying is definitely I'm a work in progress. All of this is as aspirational as it is something I can actually achieve every day. And so I'm not sitting up here on my high horse saying, oh, I'm always great and patient with mom. It's not like that, but at least I feel like I know what I should be aspiring to. So on those days, I learn to be a little more flexible, and I think that's just part of entering the reality of that person and trying to be a little bit more in their shoes, a little more compassionate. And I think the great thing about it is, and I wonder if you've had the same experiences, which is that when you kind of do enter the reality and say, oh, how did it go with your visit with, the people who have passed on in your husband's life? When you are able to be compassionate and the situation feels better, you actually feel better. Like I feel there's less of a knot in my stomach or kind of irritability. So the benefit is, I guess what I'm saying is the benefit really is a two-way street. So when you can do these things a little more compassionately, you also feel less angry and tight and uptight. Does this ring true to you too?
Yes. Oh, definitely. Alfredo. Yes, I agree 100%. And that's why I tell people, there's so much out there, seminars, people holding seminars, webinars, information, academies to learn how to be a caregiver. It's a learning experience. And, we're hard on ourselves, Alfredo, but I'll give you some advice. Show yourself kindness and grace. If you get short with your mom, you're still a good son. And look at all the things you do for your mom. And, it's okay. I know, caregivers, we have a lot of guilt, a lot of unjustified guilt, as I would call it, for sure. And I know that I had unjustified guilt. We second guess ourselves. Well, maybe if I did this wouldn't have happened. Or, and I tell people, please do not promise your loved one that you will never place them, because you don't have a crystal ball and you don't know what's going to happen to you or to them. And I learned with Matt to go with the flow. If I couldn't do everything at once, break it down, and to go with his energy. And they really pick up on our energy, and they pick up on our anxiety. If I was anxious, Matt became anxious. And it's really, it's good to admit our emotions. Male and female, we have to. It's good to recognize your emotions, Alfredo, because the one thing with caregivers, they stuff it down and they think, I shouldn't feel this way. But you know what? When people don't face up to their emotions and validate them, it's going to bite you right in your butt. And that's why caregivers have health problems, because they don't want to recognize the stress they're under. Sometimes it's caused by they want to accept the situation. And I say, acceptance, that's the first. We have to accept what is in front of us, not what they were like back then, but what is now. And that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow. It is.
It is hard. And you said something a second ago, super important, which is this idea of all this guilt. It's funny you say that because on the back cover of the book, I have a very brief synopsis of what it's about. But the only word to appear twice is guilt. It's like, guilt has lots of. I mean, it's just because it's so true. You can't help it. You do feel like, I could be better. But I think the other side of it, which you're also talking about, which is the sensing of the energy, which is if I go in there with my mom and I'm just a little more relaxed or not snippy, and just now we're talking more just body language and the tone in your voice, regardless of the words. What I've discovered too in the situation is that words go away first, but what's still there, emotion. Like you said, they pick up on your anxiety or your tension or your relaxation, whatever your vibe is. People in this situation with whatever form of dementia, that core part of them, their emotional ability to feel stuff, that's going to stick around. So, I try to tell myself in my bad moments, well, look, I can kind of, next time I'll be a little warmer, or I'll be a little more cheerful, or I'll flip around. My mom's hearing is really bad too. So a big part of the way we communicate is I will pull up YouTube videos of puppies and kittens playing with babies, and I know she just loves it, and I like it too. Sure, it's super cute, of course. So we'll watch that together, and that's also a form of communication. I'm not talking; I'm just showing her images, but I know these are images that now, where she is in her life right now, please her and make her happy, and see it in her face. She smiles, so I don't even have to second guess. I know what's going on. So that part about the emotion being there underneath it all is really true. And I think I would not advise, but yes, from my own experience, for any caregivers out there, your vibe, your emotion, your energy trumps everything. So, yeah.
That's true. I'll tell you, Alfredo, what I have said for the past several years is that dementia can rob the brain, but it can never rob the heart of love. The heart knows love. Your mother knows that you love her, and you will learn. We learned, Josh learned, I learned such a deep, unconditional love, like I can't even be explained because it's just so deep. Love is a very deep emotion, and our loved ones know that love. Even if they don't talk, they know our love, the touch, and they know our voice. And I really, I believe that, because even when Matt was dying, and not to sound morbid, I'm just being truthful, I know he heard Josh and I know he felt our love. And I really believe that. I told Matt I was going to love him right up to heaven's door. And that was just a promise I'm glad I was able to keep. And our loved ones really know love. So, keep talking to your loved ones. Even, folks, if your loved ones are in a nursing home, even if your loved ones are transitioning, they're going to go to the other side, they hear you. Our hearing is the last sense to go. And here's why I believe that. Although it was drummed into me as a nursing student. But I believe God created us that way so we could hear our loved ones talk to us right up to the end. They hear us. That's right on the money. I completely agree with that. And I just want to share this experience because it was kind of one of the kickoff points for me realizing something had changed with my mom, and that was the death of my stepdad, Jim, about 4 or 5 years ago. So he had been ailing for a long time with kidney problems, and that was finally what took him. And in my mind, while he was still alive, it was very simple. Like, Jim is sick, and my mom, Lisa, is not sick. That's what's going on. And it was only he passed that I realized that, it was much more complicated than that, which is that I think
looking back on it now, I think his body may have been failing, but at the time my mom's mind was changing. And he was, I think, supporting her when she would have, maybe a panic about her heart seemed to beat too much and she wanted to call 911 and go to the hospital, which she did many, many times after he passed. She would get in a panic when I wasn't there. And every time, by the time she got to the hospital, her whatever, they would take her vitals and she was fine. But in the panic moment when she had nobody to tell her it's going to be okay, we don't need to call 911, she did it. And I realized that they had kind of been filling in each other's gaps. And so that's one piece I wanted to share with your listeners. But the other thing, and this goes to the idea of the power of love and of sound. So when Jim was in the last few days before he passed, he went from having kind of been very physically, I think, uncomfortable and kind of depressed. It was, 4 or 5 days a week in dialysis, and it was just rough existence. But in the last few days, he was very calm, and he was at home. And I remember thinking, well, the two things he wanted, the one thing was he loved to have his back scratched. I think part of the kidney issue is that you develop an itch which really can't be soothed by lotion, and I don't think the scratching was a permanent fix, but it was me, rubbing his back and his shoulders, and that touch, I think, did whatever special job that it really had to do. And then in the last day or two, I would play some of his old favorites. So he kind of came of age in the 40s and 50s. So I just looked up 40s and 50s songs, and I would play them for him on my Bluetooth speaker, when he was not communicative anymore. But I did it because I was convinced he could still hear. So I was able to say my goodbyes in a way that I was at peace about. And also, I think the music, because I find music very soothing and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So it was learning about the transition to passing and the persistence of love on the one hand, and on the other hand, it was a big moment in me understanding my mom and what was going on, which which I suspect had been going on for maybe a couple of years before that, because my stepdad, Jim, would sometimes say odd little things to me like, when I'm gone, you're going to take care of your mom. I'm like, yeah, of course. I'm an only child. She's my mom. But, it was never a question. But the way he said it was kind of odd. And I just think he maybe didn't feel comfortable, or maybe I'm not sure. But in any case, he never really expressed what I think he was really worried about, which is who's going to take care of mom, because I see that her mind is starting to change and go, and I won't be here all the time. So I think he was trying to communicate, and he just maybe wasn't comfortable enough or whatever to say that to me. But I saw it after he passed. So that was one of the big opening doors for me in this whole experience.
Yeah, he wanted to know that your mom would be taken care of, and she was probably looking for that reassurance. And you mentioned music. There's a lot of research how music helps those who have dementia. There's music therapists now, very big. It's getting very popular now, music therapy for those who have dementia and other neurodegenerative or cognitive difficulties.
Well, that sounds. I haven't done the research you have or the reading, but that sounds right to me. Which I think music, like emotions, are so primal. Music it doesn't require explanation. You don't have to know anything to just hear it and like it, and so I think that makes sense. And it's stimulating. I think it's these activities which engage people with dementia and their brains as much as possible are a really good thing. So my mom still likes to do kind of their little word search books, and I used to like to do it as a kid too. She never really was into it as 20, 30 years ago, but now she's finding some joy in that, and I can see that it stimulates her. Or they'll do exercise in the chairs she's now in an assisted living near me, and they're really incredible people. I'm super blessed to have them in my life. But I can see that it's all about, and even when we go to just Starbucks or Safeway or the drugstore, just the sensory input, the sounds of the radio that I'm playing, or your eyes taking in new things outside. I mean, that's a form of mental engagement. It's a form of excitement. If I was in the same, if I was in the same four walls all day and they were all painted the same, I think my brain would get kind of bored and atrophy. So all of that, the music, the voices, changing the scenery, all that stuff I think is good and can still penetrate, and I think can I don't know, just activate or engage the mind.
Yes. Oh, engagement is so important. Social interaction is very important. I know Matt Ludd, when we went to the mall, and he got a Starbucks caramel frappuccino. He really enjoyed that. And I always say, take your loved one out as much as you can while they still can. Go out and enjoy themselves, because things tend to change sometimes very quickly, and you'd be glad. And take pictures, do videos, get voice clips, so that when they're gone, you have memories and you can hear their voice. That is so precious.
That's great advice. I hadn't thought about that. I have a zillion pictures of my mom and me and my mom, a family and all that on my phone, but what I don't have is her voice. And the second you said that, I'm like, boy, that's going to haunt me later, when she is gone. So I think that's great advice. So yeah, hope your listeners are obviously listening, because they're hearing our voices right now. But that's a biggie. I think it's a great idea, and I guarantee you I will be doing some phone videos with my mom in the next few days.
Well, I can't believe our time is up, Alfredo. I enjoyed talking to you, and you are just wonderful. I would love to have you on again. I really would. And you could give us an update, about how you're doing, your mom's doing, how your book is doing. Where can people pre-order your book? Although by the time this is out, it could be February, so it will already be out. Yeah. But where can they purchase your book?
Yeah, so right now you can pre-order it. I think one of the easiest things is to go onto my website, which is myname.com, which I'll spell it for your listeners. It's, alfredobotello.com. So it's ALFREDO, B as in boy, OTELLO.com. And on there you'll find information about the books. You'll have links to buy it. And then the other way, of course, is just if you just go on Amazon and search Alfredo Botello Spin Cycle, it'll pop up. Once you've narrowed down to those 4 words, you'll be able to get it pretty quick. You can pre-order it now. It'll be out on the 14th. And, I'd love to come back on, because one thing about this is the other book, my first book, of course, I love it. It's very important to me. But this one, I feel like I've turned almost into some kind of crazy, wild-eyed zealot about sharing my story and getting it out there. Not just because I want the book to sell. I have a day job. This is really more of a passion project. But that's the point. It's passion, right? I do this because I want somebody else who's about to be in my shoes, where I was 5 years ago, to have this, or to at least know it's out there and maybe just get a glimpse of it. And even if you're in it and stuck in it and feeling all the guilt and shame and resentment and all that stuff, you're not alone. You're not alone. And that's why this book exists. So, I've become, like I said, kind of a zealous nut about preaching connection, that we're not alone, that we're all in the soup together, and we're going to deal with this at some point.
Oh, I love that, Alfredo. I always, that's why I created my support group, because no one should ever walk this journey alone during caregiving, and especially after caregiving, which is a whole nother journey of itself. And there's just so much to learn as a caregiver, folks. And that's why, Pastor World Talk Radio Network, my show is resources. We are not just a radio station. We are a resource center. You go on my show, Chatting with Betsy, and you will see resources of all the people that I've interviewed and their website. And there's a lot. There's music therapists. There's occupational therapists. There's just really a lot of people that I've interviewed that are wonderful resources. And Alfredo, you're a wonderful resource, and thank you for coming on and sharing. And I would love to have you on again. And I want to encourage people, to go on and buy the book. Go on Alfredo Botello's website and learn more about him, because I just said, gave a brief bio, but there's much more to learn about Alfredo. He's multi-talented, and It was great talking to you and meeting you over the phone. And I wish you the best.
Well, thanks. And likewise. Basically, thanks so much for doing what you're doing, because I think we're probably very much on the same page, which is it all boils down to we're not alone, and the compassion that we hope to shower on our loved ones who have dementia, like we also need it for ourselves. And maybe that's sort of one of the most convincing places to get it is from other people who've been in the situation. So, kudos to you for doing this. It sounds like you're doing it with the same kind of goals in mind, and for providing all those resources, because that's what I wish I knew about. And so I think that's it's a great mission. You're doing good work.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I wish I knew about resources when Matt was alive, and I wish I knew about resources, back in my youth, but they didn't talk about things back then. And I
now,
I want people to know that there's resources out there. And folks, I'm here to help you. This is what my show is about. It's about helping others. I believe I've been called to serve, and that is why I always ask, please share this show. Share it to help other people, because when we withhold information that can help others, that's being selfish. And that's just how I feel. We need to help other people. And I want to help as many people as possible. So I need your help. And those of you who already subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, thank you. And thank you for listening. And Chatting with Betsy is for free on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Music, just to name a few. And I want to thank Jeannie White, who is the producer, and she's the station manager. And all the information about Alfredo Botello will be in the blog that Jeannie writes. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO of Passion World Talk Radio Network, who introduced me via email to Alfredo Botello, who makes this all possible. And I want to thank you again, the listeners. And folks, if you want to follow me, I'm on Facebook, Betsy E. Wurzel, Wurzel. And if you need a support group, I have hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement on Facebook, which is also will be in the blog. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world that you could be anything, please be kind and shine your light bright, because we need it now more than ever before. And if you're a caregiver, pat yourself on the back and look in the mirror and say, I am doing a great job. I am a kick-ass caregiver. And I just want to, thank everyone for support. This is a passion of mine to do this, and it's a labor of love, and it's a way for me to honor Matt's memory. And that's what I have to say today, folks. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Bye-bye now.